The downward shift we're seeing in the city is more than just a statistical blip. It's part of the larger real estate cycle. But this can certainly put pressure on real people who are thinking about making a move in the near future. Imagine a homeowner who thought their equity would keep climbing, or a family ready to move up, who now finds more choices than ever flooding the market. With sales down roughly 13% in October from this time last year, and the benchmark residential home price sliding about 4.1% year over year, we're in a moment where sellers and buyers alike are feeling the trends change. So, what's behind this downward trajectory? Well, one factor is inventory. In October, Calgary had about 6,500 units in active inventory, and that's an increase of over 30% from a year ago. This brings the months of supply to around 3.4 months. Currently, the segments of the market that are under the most pressure are still row houses and apartments, with these property types feeling the weight of additional rental supply and a slowing of demand. So this is pulling down prices more sharply in those segments than with detached and semi-detached properties. But there's also the broader economic backdrop to factor in. Calgary still benefits from relatively stronger employment numbers than compared with the rest of Canada. And while there's been a 10 to 15% decrease in interprovincial migration since 2023, employment is still growing in Alberta at a faster pace than with the rest of the country. The apartment and condo segments in Calgary are currently the hardest hit, with buyers opting to wait rather than buy now. So all of this adds up to a market where sellers can't just assume that their homes will fly off the shelves, and where buyers are gaining negotiating power. So let's break down what's happening in the overall Calgary market and the market by sector. The benchmark price for the typical Calgary home came in at $568,000, which is down 4.1% from this time last year. Days on market are currently sitting at around 43 days to sell the average Calgary home. And in October, we saw just under 1,900 total sales, which is down 13% from this time last year. Inventory is currently sitting at just under 6,500 active listings, which gives us a months of supply of 3.43. So still in a buyer's market overall, but again, keep in mind that each neighborhood and property segment is different. Looking at the sales numbers by price range, you can see a significant dip in sales occurring around typical condo price points, as well as another dip in sales occurring in the $600,000 to $700,000 range. Here you can see the overall inventory in the Calgary market, with sales just starting to creep up as inventory coming on the market begins to slow, as is to be expected for this late in the year. So if that trend continues, it should clear out a little bit of the excess inventory that's been on the market and help stabilize prices before we enter the hotter spring market. Overall, the average time it takes to sell a house is still climbing, but this again is also to be expected as we enter the winter months. The detached home benchmark price is currently sitting at $744,000, which is down 1.3% from this time last year, with the average days on market sitting at 37. In October, there were just over 1,000 detached home sales, which is down 5% from this time last year. And new listings came in at just under 1,600, with the average months of supply sitting at 2.88. So there's been some additional supply added to the detached home market recently, but while sales are slowing a bit, this hasn't resulted in a dramatic decline in prices. Detached homes in Calgary are still holding fairly steady, at least for the time being. The semi-detached benchmark home price came in at $683,000, which is up just under 1% from this time last year. Average days on market in this segment are currently sitting at 39 days to sell the average semi-detached property. And in October, there were 186 semi-detached sales, down 1% year over year. New listings in this segment came in at 329, giving us around 3.3 months of supply. So overall, the semi-detached market in Calgary is still doing well and holding steady in relatively balanced territory and seeing a small bump in prices. So if you're sitting in a semi-detached property while you watch this, pat yourself on the back. You're currently in the best position right now out of the entire Calgary market. The row house benchmark price is currently sitting at $431,000, down 5.6% year over year, with the average days on market currently sitting at 50 days. In October, there were 275 row home sales, which is down 22% year over year. New listings in this segment came in at 520, with the months of supply currently sitting at 3.83. So the row home segment is still in a buyer's market overall, And while not as pronounced as the apartment segment, it's still seeing a dip in terms of average price and a significant slowing of sales. The apartment benchmark price in Calgary is currently sitting at just over 302,000, and that's down 4% year over year. The average days on market for apartments is currently sitting at 52 days, and apartment sales are down 26% year over year, with the total sales coming in at 412. New listings in this segment came in at just under 800, with the current months of supply sitting around 4.6, placing the apartment segment firmly in buyer's market territory. The advantage in the apartment sector has certainly shifted towards the buyer. So what does this actually mean for somebody considering an apartment purchase? Well, you want to think about how long you plan to own your apartment for down the road. If this is going to be a long-term buy and hold property for you, say 5 to 7 years or longer, it's a great time to think about buying. You'll have a good negotiating position and likely be able to get a good deal. If you're considering something shorter, like holding for 2 to 3 years before moving up to something bigger, you might want to be a bit careful. The market cycle in Calgary usually takes around 7 years to fully turn around. So buying an apartment now only to sell again in 2 to 3 years could leave you selling at a lower price than when you bought it. Just something to keep in mind as you plan your next moves. So that's your October 2025 Calgary market update. As always, if you found this information valuable, please don't forget to hit like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.